Millions of people flock to national parks across North America every single year, and unfortunately, a certain percentage of them go missing. Some are found quickly, others eventually, and some not at all. In recent years, more and more people have been questioning the circumstances behind these disappearances, pushing the idea that although they may seem normal upon first glance, they're actually telling of what's possibly a much greater issue. Whether or not this is the case is exactly what we're here to discuss tonight. The name of the phenomenon is Missing 411, originally coined by author David Politis in his self-published book series of the same name. The books provide documentation and information on over 1,000 missing persons cases across North American national parks over a span of several decades. Missing 411 cases are generally linked by a set of bizarre circumstances that, according to some, demonstrate a clear pattern. For example, in many cases, especially those involving children, the subject seems to vanish into thin air despite being accompanied by another person. Search dogs seem to be ineffective during search and rescue operations. Bodies that are found will sometimes have their clothing removed or missing. In some cases, the subject, found living or deceased, is located miles away or at notable elevation from where they were last seen. In 2017, a documentary film by the same name was released. Possibly the most notable detail to arise from the documentary was the National Park Service's lack of ability to produce records of individuals that have gone missing on their grounds. Since the film's release, interest in the topic has skyrocketed, prompting numerous articles, videos, and discussions covering it. And this is exactly why we're here today. At this point, Missing 411 is well within the public consciousness, and seems to many to be the perfect setup leading into the discovery of something both sinister and widespread. David Politis has even constructed a map showing various geographical clusters where these cases occurred. Naturally, the internet has come up with several theories, ranging from this being the work of serial killers, all the way to aliens and other paranormal beings. Sadly, however, the truth appears to be much more mundane. So, why exactly are so many people going missing at our national parks, and why under such bizarre circumstances? Could they actually all be linked as so many in the Missing 411 movement believe? Let's take a step back to analyze everything in order to gain a better perspective on the overall phenomenon, and to actually determine if we can even call it that. Of course, the best place to start would be where it all began: David Politis. David is a man with an admittedly interesting resume. For one, he served as a police officer in the San Jose Police Department for just under 17 years of his life. This naturally presents him to be a very credible source of information. Where it gets interesting, however, is that Politis is also an avid cryptozoologist and Bigfoot enthusiast. His other self-published works document his pursuit of proving the existence of such a creature. Because of this, many looking in from the outside would probably immediately disregard his claims, but his interest in such things does not necessarily completely throw out what he has to say. In order to figure this out, one would have to analyze the facts. First off, are the cases in Missing 411 actual, verifiable missing persons cases? Yes, they are. There are databases that allow for the confirmation of such information, and for the most part, these check out, sort of. While doing research on this topic, I did find a video that pointed out a few interesting things about the books. The clip is from a speaking event featuring data skeptics Kyle Polish. At one point, Kyle audits a few randomly selected cases mentioned within the Missing 411 books. The information presented was mostly correct, but at times neglected to include crucial details, like if the police were able to name suspects, or certain details contained within the police report such as drug use, or if the subjects left during harsh conditions. This already brings the entirety of David's writings into question, but for the sake of exploration, let's continue. To anyone looking for a good campfire story, Missing 411 has a lot of appeal. Again, you've got thousands of missing individuals across the country who have just vanished into thin air. Now, when worded that way, it's easy to get sucked in, but if you take a step back for a second, the smoke and mirrors will for the most part clear up. Again, the cases presented in Missing 411 go back several decades and span all across America. Depending on where you look, the exact number will range between 14 to 1,600 cases. Take those figures and apply them to several decades in national parks, and the numbers begin to appear much less intimidating. According to NPS.gov, in 2017, the National Park Service recorded roughly 331 million recreational visits. Comparatively speaking, the number of people who go missing is actually quite low. Go into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and you'll see a current tally of 14,275 documented open cases throughout the United States. Keep in mind, this is taking the entire country into account. Another thing to think about is that missing persons cases are not always unsolved. In fact, if we head back to the National Missing Persons database, it'll tell you that another 14,823 cases have been closed. Does this apply to Missing 411? Actually, yes, it does. Missing 411, oddly enough, isn't exclusive to unsolved cases. There are some, including within the documentary, where individuals, usually children, are actually found but are unable to recall the events that took place. For some reason, there appears to be a lack of conversation surrounding adults who have gone missing and were found again, perhaps because their stories lack the air of mystery that would come from a scared or confused child lost in the woods. As mentioned earlier, the lack of results produced by the use of search dogs is also a key point within Missing 411 lore. This actually plays on people's misconceptions that search dogs are 100% effective 100% of the time, when that simply isn't the case. Search dogs, of course, are valuable assets in search and rescue operations, but according to groups such as Arizona Search, Track, and Rescue, certain factors like temperature can actually reduce a dog's effectiveness. Another bizarre detail presented by the Missing 411 movement is that at times, bodies will be found without any clothing on, despite cold conditions in the surrounding area. This, while definitely puzzling on first glance, can actually be explained by what's known as paradoxical undressing. In the later stages of hypothermia, it's possible that the victim may begin to feel irrationally hot, prompting them to remove their clothing. It's an unfortunate reality that people do in fact go missing when exploring the outdoors, but this definitely has nothing to do with any greater conspiracy or paranormal intervention. Picture the landscapes of national parks across America. Think of the sheer size and distance these parks cover, and on top of that, stack on varied terrain, harsh weather, wildlife, and inexperienced explorers. Think about the lone hiker who slips and is unable to signal for help due to lack of reception. To make matters worse, this person decided to stray off course. Sure, search and rescue teams could go looking, but due to the sheer magnitude of these lands, it is natural for people to miss a spot. On top of that, if the subject is unconscious and unable to respond, then things tend to get a little more difficult. It's also completely possible that they attempted to seek shelter, which would render them invisible to those looking, especially without a search dog, which not everyone is blessed with having. What about missing children who disappear from right under their parents' noses? It seems in most cases, these parents claim they only looked away for a few seconds. Unfortunately, a few seconds is all it really takes for a child to be swept away by a hungry animal or crashing river. This could be why a good number of parents report hearing their child's screams in the distance before they ultimately vanish. Of course, it goes without saying that a family vacationing at a campground can never be too safe. Despite my criticism of the Missing 411 movement and their tendency to draw patterns where there aren't any, there is one thing that they have absolutely right. There are still missing people out there, and they should not be forgotten. They brought up an interesting question that is actually worth thinking about: the lack of records maintained by the National Park Service regarding missing persons cases. I came across an interesting article on motherboard.com that outlined this issue quite well. According to its author, an attempt was made on their part to explore what was happening here. An FOIA request was put in, but according to the National Park Service, they actually didn't have records pertaining to the matter. Based on what was said in the rest of the article, there seems to be some debate over whose job it is to maintain missing persons records. When speaking to a spokesman for an unnamed major national park, they were advised to ask the sheriff for information instead. It is also worth noting that the National Park Service may not have a complete public database of missing persons, but they do have a website dedicated to investigations that comes with a short list of cold cases with options to provide tips via call, text, or online message. Again, despite the fact that people choose to explain these disappearances away via the paranormal or otherwise, the fact of the matter is that these cases remain unsolved, and that some of these people could very much still be out there. There isn't some grand conspiracy at play that connects every single one of these cases, but you may have information that helps close just one. Now, with that said, the best thing to come out of Missing 411 is the opportunity to keep otherwise forgotten cold cases within the public consciousness. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Hey guys, so in case you're completely confused right now, then allow me to explain. Welcome to the post-show segment where I speak various words and possibly answer some questions. Now before that, I want to once again thank my patrons, because without you guys, I'd be in a lot of trouble right now. While on that topic, I am currently offering YouTube channel advice to patrons of a certain tier, so if you're already a part of that and you're interested, then let me know via email. The same goes for anyone out there looking for, in essence, a mentor to help them out in case they need a bit of guidance where YouTube is concerned. Again, email me if you're interested and I'll see what I can do for you. Alright, now that that's out of the way, on to tonight's question. How should someone balance critically thinking about the validity of work/story/incidents they read about online with just enjoying things for what they are? Okay, so this is actually very similar to the question I answered last time, but I thought it was different enough to get into. This is just me, but honestly, I just think it comes down to not having a stick up your ass. As in, yes, critical thinking is important, but when something is obvious fiction, then why not try to enjoy it? There seems to be this weird obsession amongst internet audiences where things need to be real, lest it be fake and, I'm not gonna say, but you know what. Not that I think that. And not that there's anything wrong with the word that people use, but I'm not going to use it because I'm not an idiot. So, like I said last time, if I come across something spooky online where the creator just said it was fake, I wouldn't at all lose interest in it. Again, just speaking for myself, but I actually don't experience a clash between logic and enjoying fiction, you know? There's a time and place to be analytical, and there's also a time and place to suspend your disbelief and just take whatever is thrown at you. I mean, I'm not sure how many of you guys watched my video about ghost hunting, but in it I was extremely critical of the entire scene, mainly because of their methods and so on, but despite that, I enjoy a great ghost story. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be fiction, so to speak. As in, if you took me out to a supposedly haunted place in the middle of the night, with the right mood and atmosphere, at least while I'm there, I'll be as easy to scare as anyone else. Anyway, I'm droning on here. To simplify, I think if you're not an asshole, then you won't even have trouble balancing out the two to begin with. I'm sure I just pissed off a few people, but oh well.